Back at it again with the Moby chapter 118, the Quadrant. So this is a chapter which I think is the figurative culmination of a series of chapters that we've encountered recently in this stretch of the book, starting with chapter 109 with Ahab and Starbuck in the cabin, where Ahab seems to abandon any pretenses of having a whaling journey, and instead this is a Moby Dick journey, but finally he doesn't fully take that last step and respects Starbuck's request to go to port in order to shore up the fact that they're leaking oil. So this is adding a little bit of humanity back into Ahab. Then we have chapter 115, where the Pequod meets the Bachelor, and you have the obvious contrast between the happy-go-lucky Bachelor and the all-too-serious Pequod, which gives us some, indication that Ahab's serious side is still very much present, right? And then finally, we reach chapter 118, where we see Ahab's obsession with knowledge, his obsession with understanding, his obsession with God, come back into full view in a way that, we've taken a little bit of a back seat for in the interest of, talking about whales for a good 30 chapters. And I don't say that derisively. I like that stretch. It's just we got to get back to Ahab. And this is kind of Melville's way of reminding the reader what Ahab is all about. So the chapter is titled The Quadrant, after the historical instrument used for taking angular measurements of altitude in astronomy and navigation, typically consisting of a graduated quarter circle and a sighting mechanism. So it's something you use to look at the sun in order to find the angle that you're looking at the sun so you can tell where you are in terms of the equator. Cool. But of course, here we're probably not going to be talking about the physical action of finding out your location. This is more about Ahab's interest in finding out his metaphorical location with reference to God. So he looks in the sky, and it says he falls into a moment's reverie, and again looking up towards the sun, he murmured to himself, "Thou sea mark, thou high and mighty pilot." Of course, he's talking about the sun. "Thou tellest me truly where I am." So that's location, it seems, but canst thou cast the least hint where I shall be? So actually, he's not talking about location, he's talking about time, right? You can tell your location, but how can you see the future? You can't, not if you're human. Or canst thou tell me where some other thing besides me is this moment living, right? Oh, okay, so not only can it not tell you the future for yourself, it can't even tell you the present moment for someone else. Where is Moby Dick? This instant thou must be eyeing him. These eyes of mine look into the very eye that is even now beholding him. So Ahab imagines that the sun, which is going to stand in probably for God, knows where Moby Dick is, but it's not saying anything. Aye, and into the eye that is even now equally beholding the objects on the unknown thither side of thee, thou sun. And so now we're talking not about the dark side of the moon, but the dark side of the sun, right? Those places that human knowledge is inherently unable to access, right? So the fact that we're talking about God is becoming pretty clear here, right? Ahab is once again considering the fact that it seems part of the human experience is being denied certain realms of knowledge that he would love to penetrate. And thus he takes this out on the quadrant, which seems to represent for Ahab the limitations of human innovation, because obviously a piece of technology like the quadrant is human invented and represents humans' best attempts to try to gain knowledge of the world, but it can't gain Ahab the knowledge he really wants. Hence he says, "Foolish toy, baby's plaything of haughty admirals and commodores and captains. The world brags of thee, of thy cunning and might. But what after all canst thou do but tell the poor pitiful point where thou thyself happenst to be on this wide planet and on the hand that holds thee? No, not one jot more. Thou canst not tell where one drop of water or one grain of sand will be tomorrow noon, and yet with thy impotence thou insultest the sun." So I think that impotence and that insult is based on the fact that knowledge will pretend that science will pretend to understand things. It will claim that it is the correct way to view the world, but ultimately it is very limited to the few things that it is good at doing. Hence, Ahab says, "Science, curse thee, thou vain toy." And notice again that repetition of the idea of vainness, that science takes itself seriously like a haughty meaning, right, arrogant admiral or commodore. Thou vain toy, and cursed be all the things that cast man's eyes aloft to that heaven whose live vividness but scorches him, as these old eyes are even now scorched with thy light, O sun. So Ahab says, science, like anything else that forces man to acknowledge his own limitations, is to be damned. Level by nature to this earth's horizon are the glances of man's eyes, not shot from the crown of his head, as if God had meant him to gaze on his firmament. Curse thee, thou quadrant. So that's an interesting sentence where Ahab seems to say, in a kind of self-hatred, cursed is anything that tempts you to look upwards towards those metaphorical realms which are not in man's domain, right? Our eyes are not made to look at the metaphorical sun. Dashing it to the deck, no longer will I guide my earthly way by thee, the level ship's compass, and the level dead reckoning by log and by line. These shall conduct me and show me my place on the sea. I, lighting from the boat to the deck, thus I trample on thee, thou paltry thing that feebly pointest on high. Thus I split and destroy thee. So Ahab seems to say he's not going to look into the metaphorical sun anymore. There's no point to it. Of course, isn't the whole point of him pursuing Moby Dick the metaphorical desire to know what's on the other side of the sun, to feel that he can understand the nature of the world more than the average human can? Perhaps, but I think the point of him taking his eyes away from the sun and putting them towards the sea, the level ship's compass, is he's fully throwing all his eggs in the Moby Dick basket. He's no longer going to think about this until he has conquered Moby Dick. By log and by line, he will find his place, not by using the quadrant. So I think it is definitely a passage which represents Ahab's, self-consciousness of the possible uselessness and possible difficulty of his obsession, but nevertheless it doesn't seem to represent any commitment from Ahab to abandon that journey or that obsession. So an interesting moment which once again frames what Ahab is after and shows us a little bit of self-consciousness that makes him a deeper character than if he were purely unaware of how insane his own goals were. But what makes him a truly terrifying character is that he is both insane and knows that he's insane, but doesn't do anything to stop it. Not insane, but is pursuing things that could drive him insane, but nevertheless can't help himself. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.